Healthcare in the US it's a nightmare. America has been getting sicker and sicker for decades and decades while we spend more and more. Today, Americans take 22 times more drugs per person than the rest of the world. I said, Lord, what would it take to sponsor 1,000 children? And I didn't know our business. We didn't know I was going to make it. And then one day we were selling our business and we realized, man, we can do 1,000 orphans. Lord, we can do 1,000 kiddos. As we take people on these trips, we don't see it as like rich people come and help poor people. We say it's spiritually rich people. We take like physical richness and go and take some of their spiritual richness and bring that back with us.
Bold visionaries, faithful disruptors. Some call them crazy, but they are called to create. Under his power, for his glory. The Faith-Driven Entrepreneur Podcast.
When we think about solving some of the world's greatest problems, often it takes the power of so many people coming together. South by Southwest is this place where entrepreneurs, entertainment, arts, media, technology all comes together to think about how we might solve some of the world's greatest problems.
Today we are talking with Dr. Clint Phillips, CEO of Medici, and how his powerful technology is making a difference both here and abroad.
Man, it's great to be here. Great to be in Austin. South by, crazy time to be in Austin. Crazy time for people who live in Austin to probably be in Austin.
It's a great time to leave Austin.
It's a great time to leave Austin. We're hearing that. Okay. But there's a road between Dallas and Austin, and most people don't realize how straight this road is. Yeah. It's almost straight enough that like if you had a car on it, you could push it like in a straight line, and it might not drive off of either side of the road. I've never been possessed to push a car down the road, but I hear that some people have.
Pushing cars is sexy.
Cars.
It's the new thing.
Okay.
I recently had the opportunity to break a Guinness World Record pushing a car 1 mile. The record had been broken by multiple people over the years, and I worked on and off for about 10 years after my son said, Dad, surely you can break a Guinness World Record. And I was like, oof, I can eat a lot of chocolate, but let me see what other records. So I read through several thousand of them and worked really hard through injuries and all sorts of things to get this Guinness World Record.
Okay, so is that, how much voice does your son have? Is this a group activity, flipping through the book saying, hey, I think it should be that one? Or did you just come to like, you know what, pushing a car, that's my thing?
Yeah, he looked through, it reminded me when I was a kid going through the Guinness World Record and like, wow, look at these things. Yeah. He was doing the same thing, 30 years later. And so he looks at me, Dad, surely you can break one. So I wasn't going to say which one, because you might say, pull a truck. So I looked for something that fitted with my, I was a rugby player. And so I looked for something that was sort of in a range that I would have a chance. And then what was special about this record is you would have to use a lot of science as well. It wasn't just about, were you stronger than anybody else? You were going to have to optimize the car, optimize the track, optimize the body in a really interesting way. God brought Lance Armstrong into my life when, I really needed like a little nudge. And he said, dude, when you push cars, you let me know, I'll be there. I'm like, sure, he's going to come. I texted him how I'm pushing cars tomorrow. He said, I'll be there. And so
does that mean Lance Armstrong took over the driver's seat instead of your son for this car? Or like who drives the car?
He would push. I always thought my son was going to drive, and then during this 10-year process, he went from 60 pounds to 230 pounds, 6'6". So I ain't going to push that guy because it's the weight of the car, 4,200 pounds plus the driver. So I thought my little girl would be able to do it. And then Guinness at the last minute said, she's not allowed to drive if she doesn't have a license. I said, the road's blocked off, the police are there. I'm going to be doing 8 miles an hour. Like, if she goes off, it's going to be like, like just bump into something. They said, under no circumstances. So I was walking through the office, and I looked at one of the people who work there, and I didn't want to say, how much do you weigh? But I was like, how much do you weigh?
My mom said not to ask that question, but I guess you did. You got away with it.
I said, any chance you want to drive a car, steer a car? So I found this, Elizabeth just was amazing. She was a good sport. This car, you had to climb in through the roof of it. And it was a really interesting race car. And so she became my driver, and she's tiny. So that helped. Every pound mattered.
That's crazy. Now, when was this?
This was April 20th, 2024.
Okay.
So
a recent one. Does the record still stand?
That record still stands. That record's going to stand a long time.
Okay.
I think we got so many things together. I had so many wonderful people come around, from coaches to we had a friend driving a box truck, breaking the wind. The mechanic was incredible. Like, so a lot of things came together, and I gave it 110%. I said, I will never try this record again. If I miss it, I ain't trying to get it, but I will give my very best to get that. The fun part is that my daughter, who's a champion rower, she broke the women's record. And so that was a real bonus to be able to do that with my daughter, and have us both be Guinness record holders.
That's great. Okay, so sports growing up, what was the sports that drive somebody into pushing cars and rowing and all these things?
You know, I was a jack of all trades. I was like sort of decent at a lot of sports, but never really brilliant at something. But rugby is actually a really great sport that if you're pretty fast and you're pretty fit and you're pretty skilled with handling a ball and you've got a decent, mind for strategy, you can do well. So rugby was my sport. When I finished college, I'd studied as a chiropractor and physical therapist. I said, I'm going to go take a holiday somewhere. And rugby was a great way to travel the world. And I went to Italy, and I was going to play rugby in Italy. And I found this beautiful town where they gave you all the food you wanted. You could walk into the restaurants and they would just feed you. It was incredible. But nobody spoke one word of English. Later on, I would find it's genetic, but I have a very poor ability to learn a language. I can be in a country for 3 weeks and just saying thank you. I can say thank you in a lot of things. But my wife, she's already conversing with the people. I'm like, how's that possible? So I realized I was never going to have a meaningful conversation. I decided to go to Aspen, Colorado to play rugby there. And they were the national champs at the time. And so rugby's a good foundation. You need to be strong, but you need to be able to be fit and do a few things. So probably a good foundation. And you have to be a little crazy. You get hit on the head a lot without a helmet. So, you
got to be a little crazy. That sounds like a perfect sport for entrepreneurship. Breeding entrepreneurs, rugby.
I think rugby is a great entrepreneurial sport. Talk about setbacks, disadvantages, failures, told no, painful. Entrepreneurship is painful for the most part.
It is. Sometimes on the same day, high highs, low lows, minutes, hours apart.
Very true.
So where does the entrepreneurial journey start for you?
I think South Africans have an entrepreneurial bent in that there's no safety net. You get told from young, like if you don't figure it out, there's no government net for you or support. Like you have to figure it out. So I think that is a helpful catalyst for South Africans. From a young age, my mom would give me little odd jobs, and my first job was filling out the wage envelopes for day workers to get paid. And I would count their hours times how many dollars or rands would go into it, and I'd fill the wage envelopes, and it was really helpful at 13, 14 years old to start. My mom was an entrepreneur. It wasn't easy for a woman to be an entrepreneur in South Africa. If you went for a loan, they'd say, why isn't your husband signing? She's like, I don't have a husband. They're like, well, get one. We can't really loan to a single woman. Like, it seems weird. So I watched her out of necessity. She didn't want to have a business. She was like, I need to take care of my kids. And so she started, and she gave us some wonderful opportunities to drive, pack boxes, sell, like anything. We just needed to do what we needed to do. So I think that was a very good grounding. When I went to college, I was excited. They said there was this jurisprudence and like a business course near the end of I became a doctor of chiropractic and physical therapy. We learned acupuncture and all these things. But last year was this business course, and I was really excited for this business course. I'm like, all my friends were learning business. I'm like, I got all this medical knowledge. I want to learn business. And the course basically said, get insurance and get a lease. Good luck. I was like, what? I waited 8 years for that. It's the worst.
A bit of a letdown.
It's the biggest letdown imaginable. I could have given more advice in my first year to somebody than that. So had a real hunger for that learning. And God gave me this opportunity when I started and went to play in Aspen. I met some of the world's greatest entrepreneurs. My 8 o'clock would be the CEO of Under Armour. My 9 o'clock would be the CEO of Starbucks. My 10 o'clock would be the CEO of Time magazine.
Wow.
And we would just go through these people. 8 hours a day, 1 hour per person. And I mean, I couldn't have afforded to, but I would have done this job for free. I would have worked into the night. I often did, because these people were fascinating.
Yeah.
And their knowledge and their stories, I realized like this entrepreneurial drive is bigger than I thought, because their stories and the pain and the challenges that they overcome was my MBA.
Entrepreneurship can be a lonely journey. The weight of leadership, heavy. You've been called to create impact through your business. But here's the truth. Isolation kills vision. Comfort destroys calling. That's why Faith Driven Entrepreneur created our foundation groups. Join 10 fellow entrepreneurs who truly understand your path just for 1 hour a week for 8 weeks. Online or in person. Together you'll explore God's purpose for your business through practical, purposeful discussions with others who really get it. Don't journey alone. Your calling is too important. Visit faithdrivenentrepreneur.org and join a group today. That's faithdrivenentrepreneur.org.
But it's funny how, I mean, back then, like that level of learning, that idea of learning wasn't normalized. Today we think about learning from experience, accessibility of some of the people you mentioned, but to have that mindset and that approach back then, man, what an opportunity that was. So it sounds like, again, through some of that experience, sports, other things, you have the juices flowing in terms of entrepreneurship. When does the rubber meet the road in terms of kind of getting in the game for you? What was the first venture?
First venture was opening my clinic in Aspen at the St. Regis Hotel. Very exciting, because I meet the CEO of Starwood and he says, I'm going to help you get that spot. Have to figure it out with the lawyers and figure out how to borrow money to build out the space and get a deal with the hospital that the hotel that I could afford. And this is so exciting. Now I've been treating people for a few years, and now I'm really starting a business. I'm not just working for myself. I've got to employ people. But right as I'm about to open, the local chiropractors get together and they stage a coup where they say, I'm in the country illegally. I'm practicing illegally. I don't pay taxes. I don't pay sales tax. And I get investigated by the IRS, the INS, and the FBI knock on my door. Oh my God, like a movie.
Wow.
I'm just like hoping I can survive it.
You're a big threat there, it sounds like.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And it wasn't meant to be a threat to them. This was going to be a destination clinic. And these guys, what they were worrying about, but literally the FBI knocked on my door and said, I'm here to investigate you. I thought somebody had to have put this guy up to something. Like, I think you got the wrong. I think you got the wrong door. He's like, no, you're Clint Phillips, and you're under investigation. Terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
So how does that land?
Voice quivering, hand shaking. You would have thought he's definitely guilty.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what he's being accused of yet.
And so, I mean, long story short, how does you go from being your door knocked on your FBI, everybody there, you're just like trying to be an entrepreneur. Where does that land? Like, where did that finish?
A miracle from heaven happened. I'm telling one of my clients as I'm working on him what I'm going through. These guys have written to the newspaper. They've written this fictitious letter. They've had the FBI. And he says, that's illegal what they've done. They've litigiously interfered with your contracts. They've defamed you. And he says, Clint, you're going to pay for lunch. And I'm going to get this resolved. And I'm like, I don't know how you're going to get it resolved. The one lawyer's telling me leave the country, like it's not worth it. The other guy's like, man, you should move to a different place and start again. But this guy invites the 3 local guys together with us, and he says, before the meeting, please look me up. And they look him up. His name's Lance. And he says, I didn't lose a case in 28 years. 28 years, I've never lost a case. And I'm coming out of retirement to bury you. You guys are finished. You're finished. It's done for. And he says, but Clint's a gentleman. It's like this faith guy. He says, I'm not. He says, but Clint, I've got a retraction for you here. And you're going to sign this, and I'm going to let you off. And they were the thing that we're sorry. They do this whole retraction. The sad thing was they put me on the front page of the newspaper twice in Aspen.
Okay.
Everybody knew, like,
Yeah.
I'm this charlatan, supposedly. The retraction ends up on page 13
Yeah.
about this, 8 lines big,
Yeah.
and nobody ever saw it. Fortunately, the hotel and the people that needed to, but he solved what could have been the end of my career. He solved in a luncheon for me, and very easy for me to well up with tears. Just the incredible person that he was. He's passed away since, but he was an angel, an absolute angel, packaged in a rough, tough,
Yeah.
exterior.
Isn't it amazing when you look back at those moments, people that invest in us early, they don't realize just kind of what doors of opportunity they just opened up. And just to look back on that. And, I've said this before, but growing up in a Christian home, I always thought it was, the father, the son, and this retired author. And now you just realize more and more, like, that's God's Spirit at work,
Yes.
bringing people to you in a time like that.
Absolutely.
And it's just amazing to see that happen. So first taste of entrepreneurship there. It doesn't end there.
Yeah.
Does that embolden you? Does that give you that courage? Does that give you that push? Where does the story go from there?
Yeah. Well, we have this beautiful clinic. It's a dream come true. People are coming from around the world to get out of pain. We're helping people. Billionaires. We've got 42 billionaires as clients who literally are saying, thank you, what can I do for you? And I don't need anything at that. I want to just, sow seeds to them. And it was incredibly fulfilling because I wanted to really impact their life for Christ. And I would ask this question, how are you sleeping? And I'd ask this question and it would be like the walls would just come down and they would tell me, not well. And when I'd say, why? So I'm being investigated by the SEC. I can't see my grandkids. My kids won't let me see them. I'm getting divorced. And, really got into the hearts and lives of people, and it was very fulfilling. On the other side, though, I'm having a very hard time as a leader with my staff at the company. I want to change the world. I want to build multiple of these clinics, but I'm in Aspen, Colorado, and you know what my employees want? They want to ski.
Yeah.
They don't want to stay 5 minutes after work. They don't want to change the world.
Yeah.
They don't have any grand plans. They're like, dude, I just want to do as much as I can to get out and ski. And it was very hard for me to understand situational leadership. And I had to learn, like, hey, if I close the clinic from 11 to 1 every day or 12 to 2 and let these guys ski, they supported me. But if I blocked their skiing, so I found leadership to be hard. I found it easy in sports, and I found leadership with entrepreneurship to be a real difficult part and a real killjoy, because I'd be changing people's lives and would see people's lives come together, be thanking me, and we realized the impact. But man, my team, they didn't like.
Yeah. It's such an interesting thing, right? When you talk about sports, it's like at some level, when you jump on that team, you've all signed up for the similar thing. That's not always the case. I mean, some people in sports, they're there for different reasons.
Yes.
But there's a greater likelihood that you're on that same page, you're on that same mission, there's a goal in mind. In business, as you're saying, entrepreneurship, that's not always the case. As you're alluding to, is some people, hey, I just want 8 to 5. I don't want anything more. I want a ski pass that comes in form of a paycheck. It's an interesting dynamic that I think that we oftentimes, we equate the sports world to the business world.
Yes.
But there's some things, as you're saying, just don't translate.
Yeah. And, culturally, I'd come from a culture where there was a hunger to work. There was a need to work. People didn't have parents that could carry them. They couldn't get student loans like you could. And so I really didn't understand culturally very well, and found it so different, as you say, to managing a team of sportsmen. Very different.
Yeah. Okay, so here we are. We're at South by Southwest. It's an intersection of conversation of entrepreneurship, technology, media, arts, entertainment, everything that's here. And one of the languages that we've talked about here recently is that entrepreneurs and investors solve problems. And there's some big problems in our world, and there's some big opportunities. And it feels like the venture that you're about to start off is really attacking one big problem.
Yeah.
What would you say the problem is that you're trying to solve? And then tell us about kind of what you're into.
Yeah. Healthcare in the US it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
America has been getting sicker and sicker for decades and decades while we spend more and more. Today, Americans take 22 times more drugs per person than the rest of the world. Not twice as many drugs, not 5 times as many drugs, 22 times more drugs. You'd think, well, if you were living to 140, like, hey, it's not a bad trade-off. No, we're losing steam. So I've always had this burden for healthcare. It started with seeing people in pain, back pain. Like, hey, if you could give somebody reduce their pain, you can free their life for them to go ski, be a better dad, solve all sorts of issues. The next part came for me. My next chapter was when my little girl had a stroke. We moved from Aspen and we started a business that would match people with the top doctors in the country. And it was very difficult, but we got doctors at Mayo, Cleveland, Johns Hopkins, MD Anderson to agree to meet with people after hours virtually. And we changed lives, saved lives. And one day somebody came and made us an offer for that business. Like, still to this day, I get on my knees and thank my creator for just, what an opportunity.
So to unpack that really quick. So again, born out of so much of us, we create out of pain. We create out of some experience that we've had to go through. How old was your daughter at the time?
She was a few days old when she had this stroke, vaccine related. But it took years to really understand the problem of what had happened and the extent of her stroke. She was never able to crawl. They said she'd never be able to walk, talk. And so it really came out of a pain of like, wow, if we're having a hard time getting to a doctor, man, I imagine most of the country, when they have a real need around something difficult. So we try to attack the most hardest part of these specialists that sit behind layers and layers of people. Like, we just want to get to that person, just ask them the question. We waited 4 months to speak to a doctor who in the first minute said, oh, I can't help you.
Yeah.
And we're like, did your staff not know that you don't help kids with strokes? Like, how does this happen? So I think healthcare should be personal, is personal for most people, but it needs a very different type of system and structure to be able to thrive. So that was our called Second MD, and man, I'm so proud of the lives that we changed. And 300 of the Fortune 500 companies bought our service for their employees.
Wow.
And you could find out you've got cancer on a Monday morning, and on a Wednesday night be talking to the number one doc for that cancer in the country. And talk about
what a pain point. I mean, you just think about, just as you said, like, we're down to minutes that doctors are spending time with patients. And to think, the buildup is so many weeks, months just to get to it. And then how frustrating it is to get to the wrong person. And to think, man, what a waste that journey has been. Or now I have to restart.
The time, the stress, the cost, people have almost got used to the trauma of like waiting. They have to recruit family members into the, and call friends, to call. So it's very broken, and we're so excited to be on a new chapter now in a world of talk about South by Southwest and technology. 6 years ago at South by Southwest, we launched the first version of our technology and said, hey, we can move so much of the noise out of the way and connect you just via message to a doctor in a very simple way. Well, that has expanded now to go, I can connect you to a doctor, or I can connect you to the world's smartest medical AI who can be your doctor.
Okay.
And that was just a crazy thought to start with. You're like, the doctor couldn't be smarter than my doctor. Like, there's no way.
Everybody has that bias. They're, oh no, I got a great person.
You don't know my doctor. And it's been an incredible journey from having doctors review how the doctor answers. The AI doctor, we call it Dr Gabi after my daughter. She's still personal. She's doing incredibly, by the way. She's a little inspiration. And you can now ask Dr Gabi questions and have advice that is untainted, unaffected by a pharma, by advertising, by the need to be able to drive people into certain systems. And you can get, unfiltered advice in the middle of the night. And if you don't understand, say, explain it to me again or differently, or what about this? And we've been expanded it now to be able to take photos of your food. 1 million barcodes now we have, and Dr. Gabi can say, hey, that food for you is a 30 out of 100, but for your wife, it's a 50 out of 100 because she has got different issues to you. She can now read your lab work. She can now read images. And it's the most exciting journey because we can take healthcare from being so expensive and so difficult to close to free.
It's a wild thing. Everything what you're saying, there's so many things we could camp out on. We could camp out on, as you said, the bias, the questions, the connections in terms of medications and drug reps and different sides of things. But I'm fascinated by this. So I've downloaded this app before. And you're telling me that if I scan this here in about, how long does it take for me to scan this?
It'll scan your face for 30 seconds. It'll look at the blood flow just underneath your skin.
Okay.
And it can make some incredible insights by the movement of your blood vessels just under your skin.
Okay, so I don't know if we're going to violate HIPAA laws or not, but we're going to do this. So we're going to go ahead and scan this. I'm going to put this up to my face. And I'm going to hold this perfectly still. Do I have to sit still completely
You're going to have to sit still. I'll do the talking. You need to breathe nice and easily. And it's going to look at you for 30 seconds, look for irregular heartbeats. It's going to look for your pulse, blood pressure, risk of a heart attack, risk of a stroke, your skin age. And the beautiful thing is the University of Texas, the PhDs did a study there and showed they had people come into the doctor's office and go through the usual testing, and they had them just do the app. And the PhD said that it is interchangeable with going into a doctor's office.
It's interchangeable with going into a doctor's office.
And in addition, they say it works through makeup, hair, and wrinkles. So it's a very...
So it works through makeup. So you're saying if I put makeup on...
it works through a reasonable amount of makeup. We've had trouble where it says can't read.
Okay.
And we have never had the courage to put it in the app to say,
too much makeup.
You've got too much makeup on.
Okay.
Try it again in the morning before you've done your daily routine. There's a nice way that we can lead.
A little witty banter. You can throw that in there later. It
Yes.
sounds like it's there. So, all right. So I've got 20 seconds left before the verdict is in. What's the verdict going to show me? What
The verdict, the lovely part is we give you a score out of 100, just for you to know overall, like, where am I?
Okay.
My best score is 85 when everything's working really well.
Okay.
But when I'm stressed, I haven't slept well, I sit in the 70s. I can get as low as 74 on a bad day. So what is your score?
Okay.
If you're willing to share.
If I'm willing to share. My score right now is 69.
Okay.
Is what we have. And it says healthy between 61 and 80.
Yeah.
And we'll probably have a screen grab here that will show up online for those that are watching here by video. So I guess walk us through this I mean, there's a lot of information here.
Incredible information. Well, in your vitals, we're looking at what's your blood pressure, what's your heart rate. Okay. And as we can see, your blood pressure is a little elevated there. You can tap on any of those readings and just understand a little more about where you should be and how that's calculated. Under general, we're looking at a few other pieces to see, what is your skin age, what's your BMI, what's your waist to height ratios, some really good things that we can have. Then we want to understand your risks. What is your risk of a heart attack or stroke? You have a 0% chance of a heart attack in the next 10 years, is what it's telling us, and only a 2% chance of a stroke. Now, as you exercise more, as you eat better, as blood flow improves, you'll see those things go up and down with people. I remember having this profound moment when a deal was falling together. I'd had a terrible night's sleep, and it said my stress is at a 5. My stress had always been 3 out of 5. And it hadn't read my emails, didn't know my text, but it could tell from my blood flow in my face, my stress was extremely elevated.
Wow.
And now we can make a prediction towards your likelihood of developing hypertension or cholesterol risks. And it's remarkable. We go and do it to some of the most well-studied people, and they go, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I do 16 hours of testing.
Yeah.
And you just pulled that out like that? That's wild.
Well, you go into an office for a physical and get some of these barely readings and schedule the appointment and have to go through all that stuff. We're talking, hours.
Yeah. What's
We're talking
lovely about
minutes.
it is we do it before every single virtual visit. One of the downsides of a virtual visit is there's a few things missing. So doctors have to be a little safer, a little more cautious. Well, our doctors before every visit know your score. And they know your last score. So they saw that you were 74 2 weeks ago, you're down at 69. They say, if you're one of our members and you got a 59, a bell goes off and you get a text to say, hey, brother, everything okay?
Yeah.
Doc here, what can I, something's changed. And you're like, yeah, I've been on the road, haven't slept. And like, okay, but like, let's watch that trend. So it allows us to be very preventative, allows us to be insightful, and that can all be automated by our Dr. Gabi, who can say, hey, here's what's happening. Here's the supplements I want you to take today.
Yeah.
Here's the sleep I need you to get tonight. Here's the type of food.
So Gabi's the smartest doctor in the world?
We would say Dr. Gabi is the foremost preventive doctor
Okay.
in the world. She has been trained to lean preventatively.
Okay.
So she can discuss every drug you'd ever want, but she's always going to look for natural solutions before recommending drugs. If you look at a lot of the ARs out there today, they'll tell you this drug, this drug, this drug. But do we really, when we're taking 22 times more drugs, do we need somebody to tell us another drug? Like we've completely detached from reality of our body is this miracle.
Yeah.
And so Gabi, from a preventative side, I'd put her up against any of the others as well. But we got to be very specific on how to train her around prevention.
So how does that cross, like, I mean, I'm thinking about that, as you said, access to medical care. I mean, in some ways, again, that physical that my health insurance provider allows me to do once a year, I could have access to do this daily, weekly, something like that.
Yes, exactly. You get the chance to be able to try something different with your health and see the rewards. Well, that's really working, or no, that's not working. Now, we believe in lab tests. We have a clinic in San Antonio, another one we're building in Aspen, Dubai level, assess you with everything possible. It's the one end of the range where you pay and you get assessed for everything. Well, the reality is for most people, it's out of their price range, out of their insurance, and they need little checks throughout the year. Even the person who gets this assessment once a year wants to know a month later, 2 months later. So it makes information accessible. The medical system has made accessing information really hard. In fact, there's a joke that in some states you can walk into Walmart and buy a gun. Could cause trouble with a gun, but it's illegal to get a vitamin D test by yourself in case you might do something with that information, like you found out you had low vitamin D. So they've separated us from
it's illegal to get a vitamin D test
by yourself.
By myself.
If you have to get a doctor there, because the doctor needs to be there to deliver that result to you and explain that result to you. So we've made it so hard to understand our body. We've made it so hard to be able to nourish our body. Dr. Gabi now, I take a photo of the menu. She's got all my medical information. I say, what should I eat? And she says, that's the meal for you today because you've been running low in iron. And you talk about the ease of just taking a photo of the menu and just saying, what do I do? And she knows for me. Now, my wife scans and gives my wife a different suggestion because she's got different goals and needs. But we can make it that easy for people to nourish their bodies. Ideally, we want them to nourish their minds one day is the next part of the journey.
So it's easy, in a situation, a place like the States where, again, that access is not unavailable. There's just layers in between what we want to go to. But I want to switch towards just like an impact perspective. Like when you think about places where medical care isn't accessible, data, information, doctors aren't trained, like what's the impact potential of something like this when you think globally?
We just got an amazing call. It's probably the third or fourth biggest African country, and I'll leave at private for now while they figure this out. But they were like, could Dr. Gabi answer messages in WhatsApp for everybody in our country? We don't have access to a doctor in 2 or 3 different languages. And she can't say, go to the hospital down the road. There is no hospital down the road.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of work in Zambia. We've built some clinics and done some wonderful things there by God's grace. The opportunity to make healthcare practically free in the advice, the layer, the diagnosis, the treatment, and make it attainable for a person to know, hey, based on what you have near you and around you, here's what you could do, is incredible. So we think it can be the foundation for the US healthcare system. We think that it could be the front door for Medicare, for Medicaid, where families of all sorts of challenges are able to get trusted information.
Yeah.
When we think of what it could be globally, we haven't even really allowed ourselves to just think of that impact, because we first feel very called to fixing US healthcare, but it won't be a whole lot of extra work with this investment of the technology to be able to go and solve things like that around the world.
Where do you find the partner to fix? Because there's probably a lot of enemies in fixing this, because there's threats to existing model. How do you balance that?
You know, I'm writing a book. The title at the moment is titled "Your Doctor's an Idiot," but I attack pharma, the hospitals, the insurance, all the brokenness in the system. And I don't want to die, but somebody has to go like, hey, we have been led down a pathway that is shocking. Like it is really bad. We've taught kids that the only way that they can function is to get on medications early and be on them for the rest of their life, and we haven't even given them the opportunities to understand. So as the book comes out, I hope it's a manual for people to really be able to understand the framework. But also we want to give them tools like Dr. Gabi that allows them to say, hey, there's something different. So it's going to be very difficult. It's a $5 trillion industry in the US. You don't get to $5 trillion without a lot of fingers in the pies. So somebody has to lose money. Like not everybody can have all these fingers in the pie while the population gets sicker. So we're not sure how it all shakes out, but whether we get to help 1 million people or 1 billion people, we'll keep pushing and innovating. And we feel like it's a call from God to be able to do this. I didn't want to, when I sold my last business, I had the ability to just go play golf around the world. And I felt the knocking, tick, 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 like, hey, your job, you're not even at the starting line. Wow. I'm like, really? I thought I just crossed the finish line with a sprint finish, Now I'm not even at the start line. Wow. And that literally is still the case. I think we think a lot about athletics. We went to the Olympics this year. It's just coming out the blocks. We're just starting to come out the blocks for where this race is.
There's a part of that, as you said, like the establishment can be threatened by it, but like, does this actually give a chance for a doctor to go back to the things that they enjoyed most about why they got into it in the first place?
Yeah.
When I think about something like the testings and the basic nature of it, it's either been outsourced, somebody else in the clinic does it for them, or some of these different things, but like, can this be a tool to let doctors be doctors again?
Yeah. I think the role of the doctor will change. And we have a lot of compassion for doctors because they have to work in a system that doesn't align them for the health of their patient. If a doctor's patient's got 20% healthier, a doctor's out of business. That doctor needs people to keep coming in because you're not paid to keep people healthy. You're paid to treat sickness. So it's very badly aligned. So I do think for certain doctors who are willing to look up and try something, this could be a wonderful time where the relationship changes. I don't want the doctor to tell me what's wrong with me anymore. Like my AR will tell me that. My AR will even tell me the treatment plan. But what my AR can't do is put its hand on my back, give me a hug,
more the coach.
Brother, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to walk down this path for you. So I think doctors who have compassion, who have empathy, who can be really there to help you execute on the information. Our doctors reach out to people in their healthiest times, and they're like, wow, you're really serious. We had one of our doctors running out the office yesterday with the box, said, I'm going to give Taylor his prize. I said, what's his prize? He said he kicked nicotine after 50 years. I'm personally delivering a gift box to his house. It's beautiful. Like that's something that, I think for most doctors, that would be really wonderful for them to be able to do, but they have to put the ego aside to say, maybe I don't know exactly what's wrong at every time because, technology is now a better enabler of that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation. There's a friend that has a startup of a company in financial service called Endow Us that talked about this idea of like most people pick a financial advisor because they know them from somebody else. They were referred to them. They got up to the front of the counter and they were just the next number in line.
Yes.
And there's so much chance and randomness into kind of either how you get a financial advisor or how you get a doctor. What you're taking saying, hey, how do we take all of this data, this machine learning, bring it to like the early part of the scanning, and then kind of quickly point people, which sounds like a fun connection to your first venture of like saying, how do you get people quicker to the person that they really need to talk to? So it's fascinating to think about, fascinating about the US market. What is the biggest boulder at this stage of the game for you guys? Is it finding, because like you talk about the UT health system, somebody's like validating this. What's the biggest boulder in front of you right now?
You know, I think there's a collection. The big one may be that lobby groups outlaw the use of AI for diagnosing, for treatment plans, for writing scripts, for ordering labs and those things. So to protect the broken system, it's quite common to put some things in place to be able to say, no, you're not allowed to use technology like that. It's a very similar journey to a driverless car. They said it's illegal, it's unsafe, it's unsafe, it's unsafe. Well, now we're like, is it really, you really sure it's unsafe? Because I'd love to do a trial. And they don't want to do a comparison study. But there is that protect. We don't want, our cars can't do driverless, so we got to stop the driverless car. You know, I just drove 2 hours in a Tesla and didn't touch it. Freeways all the way. I was like, this is crazy. You know, like I didn't touch a pedal or a thing. I was like this. And I think so we're following a very similar journey that people are saying, well, that's not safe. Or they're saying, I would never do that. Then they ask Dr. Gabi more and more questions and they're like, wait a minute. She rocks. Like, this is really amazing.
There's a window that's shifting and there's a trust acceleration that needs to happen kind of in that adoption curve that there's only so fast it feels like we can move kind of in that trust cycle.
And we're seeing what that's like. For a young person, it's easier. We'll see what that cuff is at 40, 50, 60, where somebody can get comfortable. My mom, who's in her 70s now, she won't like me mentioning her age. Sorry, Mom.
Hey, I mentioned blood pressure, heart rate, and a bunch of other things here. So we're being very vulnerable.
Mom bought a Tesla. She said, I would never let the car drive me. Now, she says, whoa, this is a scary section coming up. I better let the Tesla drive me. I'm like, okay, so if she can see the shift and you can get comfortable, maybe there isn't really an age piece, but there is a comfort piece. And so we're excited what God's put before us. You know, we know every part of the journey there's fraught with challenges, but right now we're feeling so excited because the accuracy's there. We're thinking how to infuse the love and the compassion in the language. Dr. Gabi is trained to talk at like a 10th, 11th grade English. So people go, wow, when she talks, I actually understand my disease. I had somebody the other day who's had this disease for 30 years. And Dr. Gabi said, your disease, and explained it like this. And they're like, that's the best description I've ever had of this disease. So those are some of the exciting opportunities, but it is a calling. There's a bigger reason for which we're doing this.
The Faith-Driven Entrepreneur Conference. Here's to faithful disruptors, the ones who solve real problems and take righteous risks. God didn't give you that idea to play it safe, but isolation kills vision, and comfort crushes calling. That's why every September, over 4,000 entrepreneurs across 100 countries are gathering, in person, online, or in watch parties around the world. 3 hours, battle-tested founders, zero fluff. This isn't just hype, it's a movement. For more information, visit faithdrivenentrepreneurconference.org. Stop wondering if you're alone, and start remembering why you started.
I love the heart in terms of the re-risking. I love the heart of, like, as you said, after a venture, there could have been a lot of golf to play. But to re-risk, to get back into it, man, what an exciting time it is to be alive, to see technology, but also to see the compounding parts of your story. From the first part of your story to the next venture to kind of where God has you now, you can see that building on of it there. You know, one of the things that we talk about, like in terms of solving problems, is we talk about people like kind of finding like that unique place where kind of God's called you. And sometimes it's a venture, and sometimes it's maybe what you do in the venture side, and sometimes what you do outside of that. You've mentioned Zambia a couple of times. It sounds like that you guys have done some work down there. Tell us a little bit about just kind of what that's looked like.
Yeah. Years ago, I walked into a church, Willow Creek in Chicago, visiting a friend, and I heard the CEO of World Vision talk about the hole in our gospel that,
Yeah, Rich's book.
yeah, it was amazing. I never read the book. I took 3 copies, and everybody I gave a copy to sponsored an orphan or orphans. And I did the same. Just as I heard, I was like, wow, there is really a hole in our gospel with that. And through that process, we got to 2 or 3, and I said, Lord, what would it take to sponsor 1,000 children? And I didn't know our business. We didn't know I was going to make it. We were just struggling through that. And my wife and I, we decided we weren't going to spend more on our car than we were going to spend on our orphans. And so we got 5, 10, we got up to 30, and we were like, oh, and then there was a bit of difficulty in the business, and we're like, oh, we're going to have to reduce our sponsorships and what we're going to do. But the Lord was faithful, and we just kept stepping it up. And then one day we were selling our business, and we realized, man, we can do 1,000 orphans. Lord, we can do 1,000 kiddos. And so we did it through a few ministries. World Vision have been an incredible partner. And we said, well, Lord, what's next? I didn't realize that when you sponsor these kids, you get 1,000 letters arrive in your mailbox. We hadn't thought of we didn't even have time to respond to 7 of the kids.
Yeah.
Amount 1,000.
Yeah.
They're like,
It's quite a family activity right there.
it was a real family activity, and everybody was like, whoa, we need help. And so fortunately, they helped with the school to become the writing partners and all that. But we said, Lord, what would the next thing be? Do we try and do another 1,000? Like, what's the vision? How do you help? And just felt the desire to uplift a community. And so we went to several organizations. World Vision came back with a plan and said, here's a community you could uplift. 13,000 people, most wonderful people imaginable. And we've been going out to visit them for years now. And we had the privilege and the honor to build 2 schools, 2 clinics, and they recommended a dam. And we're like, a dam? What the heck are we going to do with a dam? They said, well, there's, 2,000 families who often have to have somebody leave for months of the year to take care of the cattle and keep them barely alive in dirty water somewhere else. We're like, that's a great reason. Well, God knew this plan, and it's almost like a Joseph story, because Zambia has been through one of its worst droughts in 30, 40 years, and our dam is now called Miracle Dam.
Wow.
And people come from all over to get water there. They've kept their cattle alive, their families alive, and it's had more impact than maybe the rest of our lives combined. And so it's just been a privilege to meet these wonderful things. We have this moment like you and us sitting outside. We'll go to visit some of their huts, and they pull 2 little wooden bricks out, and we sit and we get to hear some of these people's beautiful stories. And it's just been amazing. And now we want to take other entrepreneurs to Zambia. We've lined up other towns that they can adopt and find the needs. We've got to do wells and all those sorts of things, and have build a legacy with your family, and really involve our family and kids in doing those pieces. So that's the short version of
Talk about
Zambia.
what that's done for your family, because maybe it's a church culture that we have of like this feeling of shame and guilt that we've been guilted into, like we need to do something.
Yeah.
But we miss like what we get out of the experience. Can you just talk about what that's done for your family?
Yes.
In that journey?
It's been amazing. And there's so many wonderful organizations. My wife has gone on mission trips every year. She's taking the kids to Colombia this year, and it's some of our favorite memories. And for us, it's been so stabilizing for us and for our kids. Our kids go from an environment where everybody's got the latest iPhone to kids who don't even know what an iPhone is. They're like, what's an iPhone? Who cares? It has been amazing to see. The joy that you see in the people is probably the number one comment of anybody who goes on a mission trip and goes, wait a minute, I've seen where this person lives. I've seen what they go through. There's no way they should be so happy and smiling. So we see it as we take people on these trips, we don't see it as like rich people come and help poor people. We say it's spiritually rich people. We take like physical richness and go and take some of their spiritual richness and bring that back with us. We leave some, physical things in place, and we leave there with their spiritual pieces. So it's been incredible for our families. Absolutely. my marriage. It was fundamental in saving my marriage. Mission trips. It was been incredible.
Elaborate
for
on
our
that.
kiddos.
Like, talk about that specifically with your wife. Like, how
Yeah.
what season were you in, and how did that give you kind of a different perspective?
My wife and I were 7 years in. We were living in Aspen, and our marriage was just hostile. We just did not like each other. The crazy thing is, we were both going to church, both smiling, both doing the nice thing. But man, she was hoping I would say, well, let's just call it a day. And as a Christian, I didn't feel like I had the right. And I got to the point where I prayed, Lord, I would appreciate if my wife had an affair, because I want to get out so badly. I just couldn't imagine the thought of being married for another year, coming home to the tension, 3 years, 5 years. I was like, there's no way I could do that. And my wife said one day, hey, I think I need to go on a mission trip. And she went to Guatemala. She came back different. And she said, hey, I won't use the word on your podcast, but I have been a BR, something like that. And I was like, man,
The subtitles on that is going to be really interesting, but keep going. Yeah.
And it was an incredible start of a healing moment where we realized we had really got consumed by the cares of this world, the deceitfulness of riches.
Yeah.
We've been comparing things to those around, and we've been comparing to the wrong things.
Yeah.
Comparing our lives to this billionaire who goes and does this with 14 people working for them. And, we weren't really comparing to, most of the people in the world and those pieces. And should we even be comparing in the first place? And so that started a journey of healing, of gratitude. My wife and I will celebrate 23 years soon, and our marriage is better than it's ever been. It was hard to know how bad it could get, and it's given us amazing compassion. But ministry, seeing, being put in those situations was absolutely foundational for us.
So encouraging to hear just this idea of like being on mission together, just how it brings you back together, and how there's a part of a step of humility, that like comparing to the wrong things, but just being around people that brings you to a place of humility that fosters that in your marriage. That's really beautiful to see.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful journey. When you it's as bad, you don't even have the hope. You just hope this could be like 10% less bad. I'd be well off. To see it be as beautiful as it has become.
Yeah.
God gives you beauty for ashes.
Yeah. Amen. Well, guys, it's been great to be with you guys here. Thank you so much for joining us for a part of the story. If people are interested in the scan, what should they do to check things out? Where should they go to learn more about it?
If they can go download the app Medici Life, can put it in the show notes, and we'll put a code just for your people that will allow them to use it for free. The code will be FDE.
Perfect. Guys, check it out. It's fascinating. It's really intriguing. As we know, entrepreneurship is in this exciting, incredible moment where we step in to really kind of have this opportunity to solve some of the world's great problems. And it's fun to see stories like this where technology and medicine and everything are just kind of intersecting. So check that out. Also, one of the stories I would just encourage you to check out is the story of John and Ashley Marsh. Just a powerful story when we talk about marriage, when we talk about reconciliation and what God continues to do and how he brings us stronger out of some of the painful moments of life. Check out that story. So great to be with you guys. We'll look forward to see you on the next episode.
Come for content, stay for community. Join a faith-driven entrepreneur group online or in person. No cost, no catch. Visit faithdrivenentrepreneur.org. That's faithdrivenentrepreneur.org.